Hi, I'm Ashley. Welcome to Simplify, an experiment in uncluttering your soul with Bill Hybels. Throughout these 4 sessions, we will look at what happens when our souls get suffocated by chaos and layer upon layer of mess. When our souls get like this, we feel exhausted, overscheduled, and overwhelmed. And so we'll also look at the implications of these realities. What suffers in life when we're living it exhausted, overscheduled, and overwhelmed? If you're eager for answers to these questions, you're in the right place. Give us 4 sessions and see if your soul doesn't feel better, lighter, healthier as a result. Bill Hybels is a senior pastor of Willow Creek Community Church in Illinois, my family's church home as well. He's a best-selling author, international speaker on church growth and leadership, a husband, father, and grandfather. He put together this series to show us a few of the lessons he's learned in hopes that we'll sign up for simplified living as well. In this first session, Bill begins by asking us what makes us feel fulfilled. How do we get to the place of feeling refreshed at a soulish level? And how do our schedules and priorities affect that level of fulfillment? In case you wonder what set Bill on this journey toward simplification, we'll begin our time together with his candid explanation, involving him, the beginnings of the church God asked him to start, and a 3-year-old girl named Shauna, who catalyzed some serious introspection in her way too busy dad.
Well, truth be told, my wife Lynn was a little more fired up about having babies as young as we were. My hair was on fire starting the church, and I think I underestimated how hard it was going to be. Shauna came along in the first year of the church.
I remember the routines of our family life. I remember playing softball in the front driveway. I remember practicing spelling words after dinner. Looking back on it now, I can't imagine how scrambled his mind must have been.
It's hard for me to recall what I was doing right or wrong because my benchmark would have only been what I remembered my family system being like. I mean, my father traveled virtually all the time. So the fact that I wasn't doing much traveling, I benchmarked that as being pretty good.
I don't think I understood exactly what he did, but I understood how much I liked to be with him and how much I loved the time that we had together. There was a night, I think he'd been gone several nights in a row, with elders meetings and launches of different things, and I asked him, are you going to be away again tonight? And I think he heard that question, certainly as more than a 3-year-old could intend for it to mean. I just thought, man, I like it when you're here. I love when you're here with me. I like how our life works when you're in the house with us.
And I realized as I drove away, she just missed me. And I miss her. I thought, oh man, this is new territory. And that started a whole odyssey of trying to figure out how to look at my life differently, how to schedule my time differently, and how to be a different kind of dad. And I remember my head was spinning because I'd never thought of a schedule that pertained to my priorities as a father and a husband. I remember like it was yesterday taking a pen out and I had my monthly calendar and I thought, if that little girl is gonna someday look back and think fondly of her dad, what's that gonna require? The response I got from God was, 4 nights a week. So kind of quivering handwriting, or I put home, and then home, just right through the end of that whole year.
Again, when you look at the outsides of his life, I think you would assume that he would be utterly unreachable because of the important stuff that he's doing. But what he showed me is that the important stuff he was doing was the stuff he did with us. And he still shows us that. The way that I was parented, very much in a present, connected, conversational way, has really shaped the way that we're parenting our kids.
I got to see firsthand how rich a family experience can be if you're all in it. Sometimes when I go over to Sean and Aaron's and they're having dinner, the 4 of them, and I look at all the fun that they're having around their table, kids spilling the milk and telling stories and laughing and all that. I do a flashback, and I think that's just the way our family table was. Sit there sometimes, after it's done, just raise my hands to God, say, this is as good as it gets. What a plan. Almost everywhere I go these days, I hear three phrases. People say, I'm exhausted, I'm overwhelmed, and I'm overscheduled. And I hear it over and over and over again. And this has actually bothered me so much that I decided I want to put some headspace into this. I want to wrap my mind around what is it that's driving these kinds of behaviors. And that's what we're going to be talking about in this series. We're going to talk about how to unclutter your soul, not just your closets and basements and schedules. We're going to talk about how to unclutter your mind and your heart and your soul so that you can live a different way. Often in my mentoring sessions, I'll take a flip chart and a real thick pen, and I'll draw my infamous bucket. And I've learned how to draw these very well, by the way. And I'll ask people if their life buckets are filled to the top, if they're filled with the love of God and the love of family, if they're well rested, and if they've been exercising, and if they're sort of refreshed or replenished in multiple ways. I'll say, what is life like when you're living it with a full bucket? And people will say, well, I make my best decisions when my bucket is full. And I go, yeah, me too. And I do my best thinking and praying and loving, and so when my bucket's full, and I say, I do too. And then to have a little fun, I'll say, so let's talk about when your bucket is empty, when you're distant from God, and when you have some family rifts that are unresolved. And let's say that your diet and exercise and so has not been going very well, and you're depleted in a whole number of different ways. They'll say, I'm easily irritated. And they'll say, I isolate. Or sometimes they'll say, I turn into a working machine. Or sometimes people will say, I just want to escape from reality. And the list goes on and on of the consequences associated with living life in a depleted state. That's always a fun conversation because I talk about streams of replenishment. And it's different streams for different people. For me, the streams of replenishment are very clear. If I'm in a close and dialed in relationship with God, that's replenishing. I mean, He kind of pours that refreshment into my spirit if I'm living closely with Him. If I'm good with my family, if we're relating in a very loving way, it pours joy and replenishment into my bucket, if you will. The best time to sit down and figure out what replenishing streams you need to arrange to keep your bucket full, the best time for that exercise is when you're at least half full or north of there, because then you have your wits about you and you can be creative and you can bring other people into the discussion and maybe they can help you a little bit. But what gets really hard is when you haven't yet identified your replenishing streams and you're getting closer and closer to that empty mark, because then you're out of gas and you're out of the energy required to figure out how to refill your bucket.
I view my life right now is that I'm living in 15-minute increments. And I get through this 15, and then it's the next 15, and it's the next 15. And that's not a healthy way to live, and it's not a great way to live, and it's not really even a good way to live. However, it's the only way right now to kind of survive. With my husband traveling every single week for work, and I'm working full-time, which includes nights and weekends, and 3 kids who are not babies anymore, who don't just go to bed at 6:37. We wait for all the schedules come out for competition for our kids and classes. And I start to see what is that going to look like? Where are the holes? Who's going to have to help? What babysitter am I going to need? How am I going to be able to create something that is manageable for everybody?